It would be really good news if the world were filled with justice. But you and I both know that you don't have to look far to find miscarriages of justice. And not just in those places of the world where there is little justice, even in our own nation, where we have rules and we try to live by just ways. There's plenty of wrongdoing, plenty of times that justice does not win. But in all those cases, if you are to look on those margins where injustice is having its way, where justice can't seem to get a foothold, you'll find something consistently, always. I like to say that you will find there is God, because God cares about justice and therefore cares mightily when justice is not being done. And so on those margins where injustice lives, God is present. You might even say that God is there finding a way out of no way, and that way is the marginal way.
An African-American folk saying claims that our God can make a way out of no way. Noah, Abraham and Sarah, Joseph, and Moses each persevered with God's help amidst almost unimaginable darkness. Through the narratives of these biblical archetypes, we come to experience our own stories in a more hopeful way than we may ever have imagined. This is a series for those times in your life where there seems to be no way out, and for the times when God shines a light in the darkness, providing that way after all.
Under the shadows of the trees, I had wandered through the darkness until the way was lost to me. But it was there I heard a calling. It was there I found belief. It was there that I found courage in the hour of my need. And I walk on foot with a faith and trust to guide me through the darkest dark wood. Shadow, there is nothing I shall fear, 'cause if the dark should overwhelm me, I know the light would soon appear. Through the mystery of questions and the wilderness of days, I have wandered into blessings and then stumbled upon grace. And I walk on foot with the faith and trust to guide me through the darkest dark wood. foot with the faith and trust to guide me through the darkest wood, through the darkest wood, dark wood.
When Joseph was taken down to Egypt by the Israelites, he was sold to an officer of the Pharaoh, Potiphar, the captain of the guard. Yahweh was with Joseph, so he became a success, while he lived in the Egyptian household. The officials saw Yahweh was with Joseph and brought him success in everything he did. Potiphar was very impressed by what he witnessed, that he put Joseph in charge of the household and made him overseer of everything he owned. From the time Potiphar put Joseph in charge of the household and all of his holdings, Yahweh blessed the household of Potiphar because of Joseph. Yahweh blessed everything Potiphar owned, from the house to the fields. So the Egyptians left everything in Joseph's hands and never worried about anything while Joseph was there, except what to eat. Now Joseph was a handsome young and well built. In time of Potiphar's spouse noticed him and said, "Come to bed with me." But he refused, saying, "Look, Potiphar doesn't need to worry about anything to do with the household with me here. I am entrusted with everything you and he possesses. He has made me his equal, and nothing has been withheld from me except you, for you are his wife. How could I do such a monstrous thing? I would be sinning against God to do so." And though she pursued Joseph day after day, Joseph refused to have intercourse with her or even listen to her. One day, when Joseph came into the house to carry out his duties, he noticed there was no workers in the household. Potiphar's spouse grabbed Joseph's loincloth, saying, "Come to bed with me." But he left the loincloth in her hands and ran from the house. When she saw that he had left his loincloth and fled, she called for the household workers and said, "Would you look at this? This Hebrew came into the house to insult me. He came to rape me, but I screamed, and he panicked and ran out of the house, leaving his loincloth behind." She kept the loincloth beside her until Potiphar came home. She then related her version of the incident. "That Hebrew you brought us tried to rape me, but as soon as I screamed for help, he left the loincloth and ran from the house." When Potiphar heard what his wife was telling him, "This was what your workers did to me," he was furious. He had Joseph thrown into prison, the prison where Pharaoh's prisoners were kept. While Joseph was there in the prison, Yahweh was with Joseph and showed him kindness, so that he soon won the favor of the warden. Joseph was put in charge of other inmates, supervising their work. Whatever they needed to be done, he was the one to do it. The warden trusted him so much he hardly supervised his work, because Yahweh was with Joseph and made him successful in all his work.
All the news that's fit to canonize. This is the Christian Education News Network. World News Yesterday with Paige Turner.
Don't say anything to his father. Yeah. The brothers told him he was dead, but they really sold him into slavery. No, really. I know, cold-hearted, right? Just he was making a name for himself in Egypt and... Gotta go. We are following unfolding events in Egypt at this hour. In a shocking reversal of fortune, Joseph Bar Israel has exchanged his flashy multicolored coat for a prison jumpsuit. He has begun serving a prison sentence for an assault on a high-ranking official's wife. Joseph continues to assert his innocence and even dreams, quite literally, of a different future. CENN's foreign correspondent, Anita Clue, recently sat down with Joseph at the Cairo Corrections Facility to get his side of the story.
Thank you. This is Anita Clue. Today we are visiting Joseph, and we are going to talk to him about his dreams. Please tell me, Joseph, how are you today?
I'm good.
Good? Could you go into depth a little bit more? What do you mean by good?
By God's power is that in me.
God's power is in you. Excellent. Well, today I would like to talk to you, Joseph, about your dreams. So before we do that, could you tell me, what is it like in Potiphar's house? What does he dream about?
I don't know what he dreams about. I mean, I don't look into his mind. I'm not a creep.
All right. Joseph has said he is not a creep and does not look into other people's minds. But you do know how to decipher dreams. Isn't that correct, Joseph?
I mean, I think.
He thinks he is able to look into and interpret other people's dreams. Don't you have two other people who are in jail presently with you?
Yeah.
It is the baker and the cupbearer, I believe, are the other two people who are in prison with you. And you did interpret their dreams, didn't you?
One of them was having a dream of eating lots of cake, and one of them was having a dream of visiting somewhere.
Excellent, excellent. So, Joseph, if I were to ask you to interpret my dream from last night, would you be able to do that?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, my dream last night was that I was riding a unicorn, and the unicorn decided to do splits and cartwheels while I was riding on him. What does that actually mean, Joseph? Can you please interpret that for me?
It means that you really, really like your unicorns. And I also see that you really love cats, like, a lot.
Excellent, excellent interpretation. Well, Joseph, I thank you for your time and coming out here and talking with us. Thank you so much.
Bye!
It sounds like this dreamer knows how to handle a nightmare. Thank you, Anita. Joseph's story shows us not only how we can be protected by God, but can actually prosper in the midst of difficulty. God has turned human plans for harm into divine plans for good. And you heard it here first. Thank you for watching World News Yesterday, your source of information about ancient interactions with our still-speaking God. We hope it helps you to develop a faith to find a way out of no way. I'm Paige Turner. Oh, no. I think I put the emphasis on the wrong words. Edit.
The emphasis.
Yeah, the emphasis was on the wrong. Thank you for I messed up because I didn't turn my page.
That's your stick. Don't forget
And you
your
heard
stick.
it here first. I'm not Anita Clue.
You do need a clue.
And I'm not saying goodnight.
Perhaps like me, a few years ago you got caught up in the podcast serial. It was true crime. It was investigative journalism 10 years after a crime had occurred, a murder. that was showing some flaws in the prosecution's case, some gaps in the evidence, some questions, certainly enough to call for a new trial. This young man, Adnan Syed, had been convicted in 1999 of murdering his high school classmate. And it looked like he was going to spend his life in jail. And even after these questions arose, the work of a new trial just didn't happen. Until this week, when a judge vacated the murder charges and Syed walked free 23 years after having been falsely accused and imprisoned. The sad part is this is not an unfamiliar story, nor a new one. American justice is sometimes far from just. There are lazy prosecutors. There are those who are looking for convictions rather than the truth and justice. And sadly, that is a flaw of the human character. I say that because the same thing happened not a single time, but apparently multiple times to a young man named Joseph, the subject of our story today. He found favor, was a favorite really, of his father, which didn't rest well with his brothers. And so it didn't rest well at all when he suggested that in a dream, he predicted that one day his brothers would bow down before him. And you can imagine how they heard that. But they didn't investigate. They didn't consider the options. They drew their conclusion that Joseph was bragging and flaunting and lording over them his favoritism by their father, and that he was intending to show them. Well, they showed him, didn't they? They sold him into slavery. And when this dream of Joseph became reality, it was a scene where his brothers were coming before him and bowing down, but not for Joseph to have power over them, but for Joseph to show mercy. Because Joseph, the dreamer and the dream interpreter, had correctly foreseen that there would be a famine and had instructed the great leader of the foreign land to store up grain to be able to feed the people, and the other nations, like the Hebrews, had to come to Egypt to get this blessing. And Joseph now had the power to extend the blessing or withhold it, and chose to extend it because he understood true prosperity. Because prosperity isn't about building yourself up. It's not about having your brothers grovel before you. It's about extending the blessing of God. It's the same as the story of his ancestor, the story that we just explored last week of Abraham. That God had chosen Abraham for a blessing, not for Abraham, not for the Hebrew people, but for all the world. That this would be the vehicle. And Joseph is yet another example of God working this way in the world. Joseph went into Egypt as a foreigner, as someone who was different, easily identified as different. It's not a stretch to see the American culture of racism practiced right there in the story of Joseph in Egypt. Because even there, he is, like Syed, falsely accused and imprisoned. The evidence is circumstantial and it speaks against him. His loincloth is in the hands of the wealthy man's wife. And it's the story she tells. Not that different from the story told all too often in America in the 30s and 40s and 50s, where white women could simply accuse a black man of rape, and without any real evidence, he was killed. We own this sin as a people. This is who we are, unless we change, unless we work for the change around us, unless we truly believe that God is choosing us to extend blessing, and that regardless of what is happening to us in the moment or happening to those for whom we must speak up, that there still is a way, that our God is a way maker, that God makes a way out of no way. And the only reason we believe that is because it's always been true. Because we see again and again the impossible happen, as long as it's God's will. And it doesn't happen immediately. Joseph spends long years in prison, and he continues to do right. He helps out the baker and the cupbearer and says, "Remember me to Pharaoh." From in prison, he's doing good, and those who are released have an opportunity to look back and help their friend. And they don't remember, and they don't care. They care more about themselves than the one who helped them. So hold on, good people. Hold on when things are difficult. Keep hoping and holding on to what is right, because that is the way. The way that God is going to make out of no way is the way that you already know. It's the way of compassion. It's the way of caring for the other. It is the way that Jesus taught us. It's the way that Jesus is, for he tells us he is the way. Everything he shows us in his ministry. And when pressed to sum it up in words, we understand. It is love God. And how does one love God? By loving your neighbor. It is that simple, and it is that difficult. So what does true prosperity look like? We can rest assured it does not look like what the preachers of the prosperity gospel preach. It is not about health and wealth. It is, however, about identity. It is about understanding that you can have no worries because God is taking care of you. That's sometimes hard to hold on to, sometimes hard to believe, sometimes very hard to even see. But if you hold on to that you are blessed in order to be a blessing, and that if you're not seeing the blessing right now, hold on. Because your God is a God of prosperity who intends to bless you and has created a path for you to walk, which is your identity. It is your calling. If you know your true self, the person whom God sees, the person whom God loves beyond your wildest imagination, if you can see that and hold on to that and walk that way, you will walk the path of blessing. You will know prosperity, because that is the heart of what it is to prosper, to grow from the seed that God has planted and be the glorious plant bearing whatever fruit it is that is uniquely yours, because God has done the work of providing the growth. Your job and my job is to tend the garden. And that garden is, first of all, ourselves. And then we offer that care and compassion, that kindness and nurture to one another, so that we don't walk this path alone. What greater prosperity could there be than to know God's rich, endless, abounding love for you and for all, And to know that connection, to know that you are loved beyond your wildest imagination. Amen.
This is from Amanda Gorman, one of her recent poems that she read to the UN General Assembly. How can I ask you to do good when we've barely withstood our greatest threats yet? The depths of death, despair, and disparity, atrocities across cities, towns, and countries, lives lost, climatic cost. Exhausted, angered, we are endangered, not because of our numbers, but because of our numbness. We're strangers to one another's perils and pain, unaware that the welfare of the public and the planet share a name, equality. Doesn't mean being the exact same, but enacting a vast aim, the good of the world to its highest capability. The wise believe that our people without power leaves our planet without possibility. Therefore, though poverty is a poor existence, complicity is a poorer excuse. We must go the distance, though this battle is hard and huge, though this fight we did not choose. For preserving the earth isn't a battle too large to win, but a blessing too large to lose. This is the most pressing truth, that our people have only one planet to call home, and our planet has only one people to call its own. We can either divide and be conquered by the few, or we can decide to conquer the future, and say that today is a new dawn we wrote, say that as long as we have humanity. We will forever have hope. Together we won't just be the generation that tries, but the generation that triumphs. Let us see a legacy where tomorrow is not driven, but the human condition, by our own human conviction. And while hope alone can't save us now, with it we can brave the now. Because our hardest change hinges on our darkest challenges. Thus may our crisis be our cry, our crossroad, the oldest ode we owe each other. We chime it for the climate, for our communities. We shall respect and protect every part of the planet, handed to every heart on this earth. Until no one's worth is rendered by the race, gender, class, or identity they were born. This morn let it be sworn that we are one human form, kin grounded not just by the griefs we bear, but by the good we begin. To anyone out there, I only ask that you care before it's too late, that you live aware and awake, that you lead with love in hours of hate. I challenge you to heed this call. I dare you to shape our fate. Above all, I dare you to do good so that the world might be great.